Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Post Morning Show. I'm your host, rdizzle408, with my co-host, ML. The date is Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. Our topics for the day. Number 1, Tulsi DNI report, treason by Obama. 2, protests in Ukraine. 3, Russia's use of cheap drones. 4, U.S. strikes historic trade deals with Japan, Philippines, and Indonesia. Let's dive right in. This is a clip I'm going to play. Okay, the quote: Obama directed the CIA to create fake evidence based on bogus news headlines to then pursue the disruption of president's first term. Yes or no? That's not a quote. That's my take on it. But let's listen to this clip by Tulsi Gabbard. Some of our favorites. I was going to say our favorites, but I don't want to insert words into folks' minds there. Hit the share sound. Just a minute clip, pretty quick.
The implications of this are frankly nothing short of historic. Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office, after President Trump had already gotten elected. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious it should concern every single American, because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. What we saw occur here, as the documents we released detailed, was that we had a sitting president of the United States and his cabinet and leadership team, quite frankly, who were not happy with the fact that President Trump had won the election, that the American people had chosen Donald J. Trump to be the next president commander-in-chief of the United States. And so they decided that they would do everything possible to try to undermine his ability to do what voters tasked President Trump to do. So creating this piece of manufactured intelligence that claims that Russia had helped Donald Trump get elected contradicted every other assessment that had been made previously in the months leading up to the election that said exactly the opposite, that Russia had neither the intent nor the capability to try to, quote unquote, hack the United States election for the presidency of the United States. So the effect of what President Obama and his senior national security team did was subvert the will of the American people, undermining our democratic republic, and enacting what would be essentially a years-long coup against President Trump, who was duly elected by the American people.
My God, that lady, Jesus.
The implications. Oh, sorry about that. Let me just take this down. We must continue fighting back. And here's Bernie Sanders. Now, just a quick timeline, okay? December 8, 2016, IC officials discussed the draft presidential directive, which finds that PDB, which finds that Russian and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting malicious cyber activities. December 9, 2016, the Obama White House gathers top cabinet officials for a national security principals committee meeting. This is James Clapper, John Brennan, Susan Rice, John Kerry, Brian McKeon, Loretta Lynch, Andrew McCabe, and Avril Haines. January 6, 2017, the Obama administration shares the unclassified ICA Intel Community Assessment with the public. It falsely alleges, based in part on further information that had come to light since the election, that Putin directed an effort to help President Trump defeat Hillary Clinton. This further information is later confirmed to be the Steele dossier. This is from the DNI report. The link is in the description. So, what do folks think? Have we been down this road before? Trump is now making claims not on the campaign trail, but from the Oval Office. Media circus or paradigm shift? Alan, with your hand up, sir.
Well, I don't think Obama's got presidential immunity because of the Supreme Court case that ruled in favor of Trump. So I don't think anything's gonna happen to Obama. The problems I have more with what happened is how complicit the media's role is in it. I think reporters need to be more responsible. I've heard reporters like Mark Halpern talking about anonymous sources and leaks, and how 30 years ago they wouldn't be publishing anything with anonymous sources. And I think media's gotten lazy and relies too much on these anonymous sources rather than doing the shoe leather work of, getting corroboration. So I'd like to see an experienced reporter dig in a little deeper on this and see how far the reaches go. Ultimate outcome, I think there might be some scalps from Obama's senior officials, but Obama is not going to be touched. He's going to be dirtied up, but I don't think he'll be touched. But
Okay.
that's my take on it.
Thank you for that, Alan. Andre?
There's nothing to say about President Obama because there's nothing there. The director of national intelligence, mentioned the word treason multiple times in her video and her written document, which is insane. It's insane for a government official to call out treason, a penalty of death offense in this country. People have talked about treason, obviously, with Trump in the newspapers and stuff like that. This is the director of national intelligence saying that these are treasonous actions. That's on its face insane, and we should all call out her insanity. Her insanity being that she is not doing this is not a Obama versus Trump thing. The Senate intelligence report and Bob Mueller's investigation for the DOJ under President Trump, and again, Attorney General Sessions appointed Robert Mueller, Sean Spicer. This is not an Obama hunt of these people. The investigation into that demonstrated that Russia actively attacked this country in disinformation and other ways. This is what she's trying to disprove. It's not Obama versus Trump. Tulsi, as she has done for over a decade, is trying to clean up after President Putin saying that he's allowed to do whatever he can to this country, and that's the real problem here. That she is not inserting herself here for the aid of President Trump. Her actual case is that we should not blame Putin for doing the factual evidence that both the DOJ and the intelligence community gathered is besmirching Putin's name. And that's the real shocking thing here.
Thank you for that, Andre. Peter?
Yes, so a couple of things there. First of all, this is one of the key defenses. The Senate intelligence assessment was in large part based on the ICA that is now, and has been before, called into question. Jeff Sessions also didn't appoint Mueller. He was recused. Rod Rosenstein did. Rod Rosenstein, who was a holdover from Obama. Yes, he was moved up to Deputy Attorney General, but he had been U.S. Attorney for Maryland. And so furthermore, I'm going to read here from this book. It's called Swift Boating America by Hans McKeon. See, and basically it goes into, where's the page here? No, that's not the right page. I'm sorry. There's a whole chapter in here about the ICA. I won't bore people too much, but there's a whole chapter in here on the ICA that is footnoted and cited about the corruption that went into the drafting of it. And I'll just reference this real quickly in reference to President Obama. This takes us back to Obama. While he may not have known the details of what the FBI or its Swiftboat companions were up to, he did know that his own CIA director had warned him that Clinton had a plan to vilify Trump by stirring up a false scandal involving the Kremlin. This fact alone dispels the myth that Obama had good intentions when he ordered the ICA. Instead, Obama's intention was to severely undermine Trump before he was even inaugurated. And then I'll skip ahead a bit. It was understood by all that the ICA would be used as a political weapon to delegitimize the incoming Trump administration. To underline this point, Russia experts with decades of experience were excluded from the effort altogether. The CIA's two top experts on Russia were so upset by what was unfolding that they twice wrote to then CIA Director Brennan, bitterly complaining that there was no evidence whatsoever that Putin wanted to help Trump. And I'll just leave that. There's more I could go into there. Though the book is very well sourced and footnoted. So I will.
Who's the author,
it.
please?
Hans McKeon, HANSMAHNKE.
You could hold that up to the camera one more time, Peter. All right, great. Thank you for that. Swift Boating America. Haley?
Okay, so I'm not as nearly nuanced in the issue as half of you are. So I'm going to take like a normie standpoint just from the news and just from like the the next, what's been happening the last few days. I think I spoke about this yesterday a little bit, but I don't think there's any from anything that I've seen so far, I don't think there's anything new here. I understand that it's now basically like documented evidence that what the theory, like the rumors that we've all been saying in the last, 8 years have been like confirmed. I'm assuming that's like what the bombshells are. However, I don't, just as I think the same thing on like when the Democrats have tried to do this to Trump and tried to go back in time and, investigate him and prosecute him and all of this crap, I don't think this is going to do any good politically for Trump if he goes about this route. I think this is going to just tank his agenda. I think everything's going to be mired in this entire, scandal, and all of his agenda is just going to go out the window. Nobody's going to care about anything else. So I just think that this is a losing strategy for him if this is like what we're going to be dealing with for the next couple of years. And I just think that like, as much as it might be personally bothersome for him, and I understand that like he wants to see justice because of what was done to him, for the good of the country, I think that he needs to move on from it.
Thank you for that, Haley. Jen?
Well, there's a part of me that agrees with you, Haley. But there's another part of me that recognizes that a good part of the Trump haters still believe all of the Russia stuff, still believe that he did all of those things, that the report wasn't based on a false, made up document. And the other thing is, I'm all about forgiveness, but there has to be some repentance before you forgive. So I haven't heard any of the people who were, let's just say implicated in this say, yes, we did this and we repent. And it was a bad idea and we'll never do this again. So, there's kind of a lot going here. I did not read the Mueller report. So if somebody did, can you tell me, was there anything in the Mueller report that talked about it being a fake document that was purchased, bought and paid for by Hillary's campaign, and that Obama knew that it was a false report bought and paid for by Hillary's campaign? So, unless that kind of gets into the public record or the official record, not just what's out there in the media, if there's no meat behind these accusations, absolutely should never have even been talked about. But if there is meat behind it, yeah, let's get those things into the official public record. I don't expect that there will ever be confession or repentance, but yeah, it's hard to move on and forgive when, as far as I know, they would get up to the same thing all over again. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Jen. Andre, is there meat in this borscht? I think you're going to tell us no, there's no meat in this.
I personally don't put meat in my borscht, but I enjoy when other people do. Second of all, there's nearly 1,000-page Senate report, hundreds of pages of the Mueller report, all produced by sworn agents of the United States, whether those are congressional researchers, senators, FBI agents. How are we supposed to take the word of a Hans McCabe independent lawyer more credulously than a vetted, oversight-driven report? Two reports, the Mueller report and the Senate report. Like, why? How down the rabbit hole do we need to go to be like, no, this one guy, he knows all the secrets. He found everything. And then, well, you know what? The U.S. Senate and all of its resources and the DOJ, they were clearly all under the lizard people. As far as the Steele dossier was used by the Trump campaign, not campaign, the Trump circle, to disavow any investigations, much like the defense against the Georgia case. It wasn't a defense against what he was being prosecuted as. The defense in the Georgia case was, listen, this prosecutor can't be assigned. She has a conflict of interest. Let's get it out. Similarly, the Steele dossier does not disavow everything that came out afterwards. So the Mueller report includes over 140 contacts that were made between Russia trying to get contacts with Trump campaign people and then people who ended up in the administration. That the Steele dossier is used by the Trump circle as saying, well, you can't go and further investigate because the fruit of the apple was the Steele dossier and that poisoned everything. So let's ignore all the investigation afterwards. This is not a criminal case. These were congressional fact finding on the Senate side, and then the DOJ had a fact finding to which they did not see criminal charges. But that doesn't ignore the fact, we can't ignore the fact that Russia continually tried to gain access to this country. And that's what we should be focused on, is a foreign power trying to influence our election, not whether, Trump peed somewhere or something. That should never be our focus.
Thank you, Andre. Dean?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I don't mind going after Russia as an entity. How it was connected to Trump was my issue with that in the beginning. If the case is being made that Russia continuously in the 2016 election, in the 2020 election, in the 2012 election, positioning themselves and sowing seeds of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the election process. Yeah, I believe that. I don't have a problem with that. I think more the tightly intertwined narrative was that this was Trump, specifically. And oh my gosh, I saw a comment in the main chat about, well, he was the first one to publicly say, "Hey, if you got those emails, man, if that's all that's there, if that's that's there." I understand how the left will, or my friends on the left will hang their hat on it. The bigger concern for me is not concern. It's just the ongoing issue of the close ties that the mainstream media has with the Democratic Party, and whatever the narrative is coming out of the party tends to get more air. So what I'm trying to determine just overall in this issue, is this the Russia hoax or with the dossier and everything, is this closer to the time when the Republicans took control of Congress and somebody in the Clinton administration said, these are draconian cuts. And then the Republicans said, no, we're just cutting the increase that they're getting. No, it's draconian cuts. And all you saw through the news narrative was that the Republicans were making these draconian cuts. Is it closer to that, meaning the relationship, I'll call it an unhealthy relationship between the Democrats and the mainstream media? Is that more of the there that's in this, the Russia? Again, I agree with the fact that Russia constantly tries to influence our election. I just didn't like how it was tied to Trump. And I guess that's it for now.
Thank you, Dean. Peter?
So the question isn't did or didn't was or was not there interference or influence operations or whatnot. The question is, was that done with the purpose of sowing discord and distrust generally in the political process, or specifically to help Trump? When I'm citing those statements in the book that, senior CIA Russia experts and whatnot were objecting to Brennan's direction for the ICA, they're not objecting to the idea of influence per se. They're objecting to the idea that it was specifically targeted to help Trump, as opposed to more generally sowing discord and distrust in the political process, which was the consensus prior to the ICA, which Even Adam Schiff made statements to that effect before this whole narrative got shifted on its head. And then I will just link here for extra context for folks. Matt Taibbi on the Megyn Kelly podcast from yesterday, going more in depth on what these new. Yes, I'm sure. I'm
You
guessing
knocked
Andre's.
out Andre with that link, man. Metaphysics here.
I'm sure Andre's not a fan, but it's, people can take a watch. It's about 16 minutes and can, can evaluate and come to all their conclusions.
Thank you for that, Peter.
Oh, and just to answer, and I posted it in the chat, but just to answer Jen's question real quick, it is documented in record about the Steele dossier and its origins. I quoted in the chat from Special Counsel Durham's report about that. Just to give one example, I'm sure there's more detail there. So there you go on that one.
Thank you, Peter. Duke?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not what you say, it's not what you think, it's what you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. These people on both sides are not stupid, as much as we'd like to think some of them. But they all got to where they are, stepping over dead babies and stealing nickels off of dead people. That is unfortunately our political situation in 2025. Okay, so they know how to get right up to the edge of the law and walk that tightrope and hope they don't cross too far over to the other side where they can get caught. But it's not what you think. It's what you can prove, and I don't think there's a bit of proof on either side. That's why they had to work so hard to get Trump in. I mean, they bent and twisted every possible conceivable rule that you can. Now, and fortunately for Trump, they picked a prosecutor in Georgia who was having an affair with the guy that she hired, which was incredibly stupid. But yeah, these people are not dumb. They're all they're all guilty of something. It's just they've skirted the law, and I don't think you can prove it.
Thank you, Duke. Jen?
I'm trying to think. I kind of lost my train of thought while I was waiting. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, concerning Tulsi Gabbard, I'm going to bring up that it once again was Hillary that accused her of being a Russian asset. And yeah, Hillary, it's Hillary's go-to move whenever she's chosen to not like somebody. She accused them of being a Russian asset. And, Tulsi has a rather high security clearance in the government prior to all of this because of her, the fact that she was Army Reserve and worked with intelligence things. And they looked into all of this very carefully, and she never lost her security clearance. So if she was a Russian asset, I don't think they would have left that security clearance there. So yeah, over and over again, Hillary has inferred that Tulsi is a Russian asset. So sorry, I don't believe any of that. I just think it's another one of Hillary's tactics she uses against her enemies. So
thank you for that, Jen. Daryl?
Yeah, there's a couple things with this Russia investigation. What the Democrats did is, regardless of whether you want to dispute the facts, whether Russia tried to influence the election in the same way that every other country tries to influence the election. What I think what the Russia investigation did was it set into the minds of average folks that Trump and Russia literally colluded. And I remember when I lived in the neighborhood in Philadelphia, this was all going on. and I would chit chat with my like gay neighbors, my older gay neighbors, and they're like smart people, but they would say things to me like, "Oh yeah, like Russia changed the votes in the voting machines," like stuff like that, which has no evidence whatsoever. So this is a typical strategy, right? You start talking about these high level things like, "Oh, Russia tried to influence the election by connecting to individuals in the Trump campaign or whatever." And then it gets boiled down to the average person where no, Russia literally flipped votes on voting machines, or Putin and Trump are literally on the phone, like planning out how they're going to steal the election. So I think there needs to be a reset to try to like save some of these people who believe in this like conspiracy theory. Again, regardless of whether you want to argue about how Russia may have tried to influence the Trump campaign, people really believe some of this crazy nonsense. The other thing I think we should be aware of, and I think might be coming down the pipeline, is if any of you are familiar with the story of Papadopoulos and how he got wrapped up in this whole Russia investigation. Andre, I see you shaking your head that you know what I'm talking about. You know, it seems to me, if you know that story, it seems to me that foreign intelligence was also somehow involved in orchestrating this Russia collusion thing and setting some of these guys up, particularly Papadopoulos. You know, and there was like he got a suitcase of like tens of thousands of dollars. Where'd that money come from? So, and I'm forgetting the guy's name who he was dealing with, who also has disappeared. Like nobody can find this guy. I don't know if anybody remembers his name, who Papadopoulos was dealing with, the foreign agent. But anyways, I have a feeling that Tulsi has not. Mitzvud, that's right, Mitzvud. Which I think still to this day nobody has any idea where this guy is. I know Bill Barr went over to Italy to try to find him during his investigation, and they kind of gave up. They couldn't find the United States government and all CIA, FBI, all these guys. They can't find this person. Anyways, I think Tulsi has not revealed everything. I have a feeling there's going to be more stuff released down the pipeline, and I think if there are things about this Papadopoulos situation, it'll become much more obvious that it was rigged. But yeah, those are my comments on it.
Thank you for that, Daryl, and thanks, Peter, for the tip on Mifsud. Dean?
You're not going to get rid of the crazies out there that'll believe anything will take a little bit, nor should you try. However, I do think this is going to knock Epstein to a greater degree off of the main page. And I think it, to a degree, I do find it hard to believe that this is coming out right now, or they just waiting for the news cycle to change. I don't know, but it is amazing. I mean, just hats off to the Trump administration for, managing the narrative in an unfriendly media environment. Because even if it's almost that Dan Ariely's book, if you haven't read Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, a Paley, a good Israeli, I think he's originally a statistician or something. I think he's a doctor now. Great book on you know it's coming and you still act crazy. I don't see it, as Haley said earlier, I don't see this as a any more of a distraction than the Epstein files. And frankly, Sean was making this case too, that why aren't we talking about the bigger things? Well, you know what? The administration said we're being knocked off message. We've got this this northern magnetic pull that's pulling everybody in one direction. Let's hit it with an equal and opposite strength, and let's see if we can negate this. I think in some weird fantasy in my head, that's how decisions get made. That's kind of scary, but I think eventually they'll get back to the business at hand, the big beautiful bill, and the tariffs and the economy. I think they'll get back on message here soon.
And Dean, if I'm not mistaken, a week ago, weren't they calling for Tulsi's head? Maybe not her head, but there was some like.
Oh, I know. Just wait another week. It's like the weather in Ohio. Just wait a day.
Just wait a day. Haley.
So I agree a lot with what Daryl said, like, because I know I have literal family members who.
Wait. I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that last sentence? I think I got it
It
wrong.
happens more often than you guys think. It's just one topic. It's just one very specific topic. But I do agree because I have family members who still believe that Russia and Trump colluded. Like, they think that like Putin has something on him, like to this day. So I don't think that, but the problem is I don't think we're ever going to change their minds. People who believe that are stuck in their ways, just like people who believe that, Trump wants to be king are stuck in their ways. So I do want to discuss, like, because I have like a personal theory because of what's happened with Tulsi. I think she's trying to get back into Trump's good graces with this report. I think that she's doing this because she like needs to, half of this is because she needs to prove to Trump that she's, still on his team, still there for him. And this is like a personal thing for Trump. I really do think that this is like way more personal than it is for the good of the country and, all of that. While I do believe that there, a lot of what you guys are saying is true. And like, the Russia investigation, there was a lot of problems with it. I think that Tulsi, unfortunately, with a lot of people who are in the center and who liked her, and I was definitely one of them, who was really interested in her in the beginning when she joined Trump, I'm so disappointed. I thought she was going to be more of like someone who was able to like maybe push back a little bit, but she's just like following the train, if not leading the train on like everything Trump wants, she will do. I think she's going to tarnish her reputation with this, unfortunately, like with people who were interested in her, who were not so MAGA like myself again. And it's just a shame because I like her politics. I like what she stands for. I just think that she's maneuvering her position completely wrong. And again, like I have to just say this again, like this is not going to do any good for anybody. It's going to shift Trump off of like his agenda is going to go up in flames. Like if we're really going to pursue this, if there's going to be investigations and all of that. And for what? Because Obama has presidential immunity thanks to Trump. So like, what is this all for? I just think this is a big cluster of their own making. And it seems like there's a lot of those these days.
Thank you for that, Haley. Andre?
Yes. So the president of the United States, what Haley was referring to, said that his director of national intelligence is wrong, that the director of national intelligence doesn't know what she's talking about. This was the stated position of Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago. And so now Tulsi is doing something different that he likes. So we know the politics within the White House and how people have to have a pecking order and chip away to get back into good graces. As far as, once again, there is, it's hard to have a happy medium because of the grifters that we mentioned. Dean said, there's always going to be people trying to believing crazy things because of people on the internet, perhaps like Matt Taibbi, who doesn't know what he's talking about. And I've read his stuff for 20 years and made notes all the time about, oh my God, he's parroting this thing from this Russian minister, now this Russian minister, now this Russian minister.
That was my other question, Andre.
Yeah.
What don't you like about Matt Taibbi? Like what?
When did you get into Matt Taibbi? Just when did that start?
Twitter files for me.
Exactly. And I had to read him for 20 years before then.
Well, when he was all Marxist.
Beyond that, when he was living in Russia and putting out nonsense. And not to mention the fact that, he was one of those people for 6 months saying there's no way that Russia's invading Ukraine. no way to Russia's invading Ukraine, parroting what he's being told from Russia. So, but regardless of Matt Taibbi, there's going to be plenty of people pushing stuff online, but that's not the government. And so the government was not saying, and in fact, that's one of the things that Tulsi conflates and was destroyed by Andy McCarthy on Fox News, saying like, "What are you doing, woman? Like you are." The government was saying clearly that Russia did not hack into the election systems, and now you're trying to change that and trying to find a conspiracy going against. He rightly pointed out that John Ratcliffe, who is currently in the administration, he was the acting director of the CIA that backed up that intelligence community assessment. These are all like she's trying to put a narrative out there that she successfully did as a politician, as a media personality, but that doesn't stand the scrutiny. And we will all see. We will all see when she has something to put in front of a judge. But that was the real problem with Papadopoulos and other people, because there are things that people can say in public, but then when you're put up in front of an FBI agent or somebody else that you need to swear and not do perjury, that's when people got in trouble. Is people didn't want to burn their political bridges with the Trump administration and say what they knew, or they were just outright lying for their own purposes. And that's when people got in trouble. That was the real meat and potatoes of any possible criminal case, which is why there weren't any criminal cases from the Senate report and the Mueller report. It's because there was just obfuscation and nothing arising to the level of a criminal conspiracy. But that doesn't mean that there weren't over 100 contacts made, person-to-person contacts. We're not even talking about the internet stuff, but Russia actively trying to get assets within the Trump administration. So this is, again, I'm blaming Russia. I'm not blaming Trump on this. I know people are very hurt about the rhetoric over the last couple of years, but I would like to focus on who the real enemy is and not soften that because of political rhetoric that may have happened. I think that's a detriment to us. And we see that real life today because we have gotten rid of the protection systems on our election interference. We've gotten rid of the disinformation monitors in the State Department because people like JD Vance says that's about, no freedom of speech. We're going to be in trouble for the next couple of elections. I'd like to see what the government is going to do because we've dismantled that department. So it's going to be hard going forward.
Thank you for that, Andre. Jen?
Oh, sorry. I'll just go ahead and not comment at this point. Thanks. Bye.
You'll relinquish your time to the gentleman from
I've got a job I've got to run off to. So goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. All righty.
See
Bye-bye.
you, Bunny.
Goodbye.
Go ahead, Shamsul.
Okay. Sorry I'm late, guys. Too exhausted to start earlier. So, but sort of miss you guys. On this, actually, I was just watching Megyn Kelly's interview with Mike Taibbi, and they laid out pretty interesting as far as I'm concerned. I mean, at least if it's verifiable, I think that they've got a case. So that's as much as I know from that, and I'm actually quite intrigued because I think that it's probably as equal as, dude, what again? If it is really true, I don't know. I mean, so I've been following my Taibbi for a while, actually, quite long, since Rolling Stone days, So okay, Rahul, you guys must have talked tariffs early on, right?
That's going to be that was actually the topic C, as I've learned from Dean ABC.
Oh, okay. I'll shut up then. Yeah, I'll jump in later on that. I just want to
back to you, Shamsul. Thank you for bringing.
I just dropped by on the Taibbi thing I saw, and I sounds pretty convincing. They can put the proofs on, man. Watch out. Okay.
Thank you for that, Shamsul. Dean, to close us out.
I'd like to hear. Here's what I learned today. I had no idea Matt Taibbi spent time in Russia. I had no idea his history before the Twitter files. So I learned that today. I haven't kept it secret that I rely on folks in the media as not advocates. I can't remember the word. Proxies, as proxies for thought many times. And I trust Megyn McKelly. I liked how she laid out her her thought process, and I want to be careful. I saw the 15 minutes with Matt Taibbi. I'm hoping to see something similar with the other gentleman, Andrew McCarthy, who was taking the opposite view. So we can, so I can just at some point, make up my mind. It's unfortunate that and I think Andre made this point, but I'll underscore it. We have to have trust in our Justice Department, our law enforcement entities at the federal level all the time, not just when the party in power is the one that is our party in power, and that's got to be an overarching goal. I think over the next, it's not going to happen in one administration. I think it needs to happen over the next couple of cycles here, and we have to get back to trust. And what was the other thing? Truth. I can't remember what the stuff that I don't want Twitter to be the arbiter of truth on COVID, on election fraud, on I want to see all of those views out there, and I will choose which ones to listen to. I think I think we got to get closer to that ministry of truth. I don't think that's what it was, but boy, that sure sounds scary to me.
Thank you for that, Dean. Peter?
Yes. So for the record, I have read I've been reading Matt Taibbi since 2014. So I'm not a Johnny come lately here. I actually know his uncle, funnily enough. His uncle is a subdeacon at the church where I was baptized a few years ago. He's a very, very nice guy. But anyway, so the point being, like, I actually would be interested to see, I'd be interested to see Megan or whoever else have someone like him and someone like Andy McCarthy on and have them do a debate. And I'd be very interested to see that. We should be evaluating people's arguments on their merits, not, oh, Matt Taibbi should be discounted automatically because he, said these things, back in the day, or Andy McCarthy should be discounted for whatever reason. So I would in fact be interested to see something like that. I'm sure, maybe we'll get something like that in the, days to come, and I hope we do. And that's all. I'll conclude on that.
Thank you, Peter. ML?
Yeah, going back to Matt Taibbi, I think it's important to we may disagree with him from time to time or whatever, but he is one of the rare journalists who is a journalist, in my opinion. I mean, quality can vary depending on personal preference, but so is Glenn Greenwald. And for my generation, at least, I mean, these guys are a little bit older than me. I look to them, and if they come out and they say something serious, I pay attention more often than not. Now, if it's a bullshit jackass grifter, there's like a subset of these on Twitter who have popped up, and they've been there for a long time. But when they pop up and they say bullshit things, I don't pay attention to them. And I think it's important to have the Matt Taibbi's and the Glenn Greenwalds of the world. And I think this kind of goes back to what Mark Halperin said a long time ago during the election. He said it's not necessarily that the media is left per se, or, I mean, obviously that's, whatever. But like, if there are things going on in the news cycle that are heavy around certain topics and things, I think sometimes we make the mistake of not taking them seriously when they're just literally covering the news. I'm not saying that removes their slant or whatever, but sometimes that's just the case in a given news cycle. So if you have these things that keep coming up, I would hope that there would be something to come from this. But I think this all goes back to, I really don't care if the DNI or this or Tulsi that or FBI this or whatever. The whole point is, like, hopefully this puts us on a path to restoring that trust in these institutions. Like, I remember being a kid and looking up to, wanted to, looking at the FBI or things like X-Files or, really cool movies or shows like that, or The Fugitive or whatever, and having a high watermark. And it's been gone. Now, obviously if my side won, so I'm going to put a little bit more trust into them, a little bit. I just think there's just been a whole decade of political intrigue and palace intrigue in the United States, no matter what side you're on, and I think people are tired of that, and I wish it would go away, but these are growing pains. We have to make peace with them and hopefully move forward and in a better position than we were yesterday. But yeah, right.
Thank you for that, ML. Andre?
Yeah, I'm not against Matt Taibbi because he lived in Russia and he worked on a Russian newspaper. Also, I want to agree with ML for those points. I read most of the stuff I try to read is people who are opposing viewpoints because I want to know what's being said. My feed will give me Democratic supporters and other stuff generally, so I try to read long form pieces by who are contrary. But in terms of Matt Taibbi, to add a little bit to color to what Peter mentioned about his background, so not only was he in about whether he's a good guy or not, he had a big falling out with the left for Me Too, because people started reading the stuff that he published for over a decade in Russia, which was a lot of people a lot of people read as very misogynistic. He was the editor. He was the on the masthead of a journal that was online that had a section about hey, these clubs have the most rapeable women in it. That's the kind of stuff that Matt Taibbi was doing for over a decade in Russia. And other people came out later that people said it was a he said she said. But in any case, Matt got Me Too'd because of what he wrote online when he was in Russia for over a decade. And that changed his political collections here in the United States, much in the same way that probably Iraq War changed Glenn Greenwald and how he went from one thing to another. So Matt then started doing a lot more stuff in the Megyn Kelly space, not automatically to Megyn Kelly, but he was welcome more in other spaces after the Me Too. So he has had different changes in his political sensibilities because of the way he feels he was treated. So I think that's a little context on where he's been for a long time.
Thank you, Andre. Peter?
Yes. In response to ML's question, I do believe that what Taibbi and his then partner Mark Ames have said about those things is that they were satirical. I personally find that kind of thing distasteful myself, but I wouldn't, not to the point of canceling people over it, especially given that, by the time Me Too happened, that was like 15 years in the past. But just sort of one last comment. Look, Glenn Greenwald has lost all credibility. I don't agree with Glenn Greenwald on everything. I do think that in general, I don't agree with everything he says, but I think that in general, he is someone who tries to be to hold like consistent positions as he sees it. He has been critical. He was very critical of Biden for various things. He's now been critical. He's now become more critical of Trump over the Israel-Palestine stuff. I don't think in his case I saw an interview with him where he said, X many years ago, Rachel Maddow called me like the best journalist on the progressive left, and he said, I've never changed any of my positions since then. I've just been consistent. You can agree with that or not disagree. That I think we all are imperfect. We all fall short. And again, I have a lot of I disagree with many aspects of his worldview, but I do see an attempt to do that at least there. And then my sort of last point in terms of why we should care about things like this. I think that, this idea of the intelligence agencies thinking that they can do whatever they want or is not new, should not be something that concerns only people who support Donald Trump. I mean, I think back just to give one example of what Chuck Schumer said in that interview during the transition period, 2016 to 2017. where he where he said, the agencies have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. He was kind of, you can say whether he meant that as a veiled threat or whatnot, but regardless of what he meant by it, we shouldn't be content with a status quo where that is the case, where, if the intelligence agencies dislike a politician, they can go after them in various ways. I mean, we can talk about, during the Obama era, John Brennan, the CIA spying on Dianne Feinstein's staff when they were looking into the torture allegations. I think, they probably, if Bernie Sanders had tried to govern in a way consistent with his campaign promises, if he'd won election in 2016, there might have been some messing with him as well. So I don't think that this is a status quo that anyone should want to accept in this country, and hopefully we can get to a better place from there.
Thank you, Peter. The quote in my head is Comey was wearing a wire when he met with Trump. So that there had to have been a lot of planning going on for that to happen. But that's going to close out this topic, folks. Thank you for your views on that. We're going to move into something interesting in Ukraine. Peter brought it to my attention. If you guys give me a moment here. Okay, this is the second topic. Protests in Ukraine as Zelensky signs bill targeting anti-corruption bodies. This is from the BBC. Ukraine's President Zelensky has signed a bill that critics say weakens the independence of the county's anti-corruption bodies, sparking protests and drawing international criticism. Critics say the new law undermines the authority of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, SAPO, placing them under the control of the Prosecutor General. In an address on Wednesday, Zelensky said both agencies would still work, but needed to be cleared of Russian influence. Good or bad for Ukraine? What do you folks think, Peter?
Yeah, so really, I'm curious to get Andre's thoughts on this, and just to sort of go into it a bit further. What is interesting is not so much to me, it seems like the protests are pretty small. That's not like
one protest.
Right, the protest. That's correct. And it was like something like 350 people, something like that. That's not so much interesting to me in and of itself. It's more the fact that the EU, that various people associated with the EU and in the Western press are reacting this way. Why do you think that that would be the case? And of course, yes, I did see Zelensky's statement. I might have it here. This is what happens when you bookmark way too many things. It takes a minute to find stuff. Let's see. Where is it? Here we go. This is Zelensky being quoted by Volodymyr Tretiak, if you know who that is. I spoke with the head of NABU, Semen Krivonos, SAP prosecutor Alexander Kremenko, etc., all these people. The anti-corruption infrastructure will operate, but only without Russian interference. Everything must be cleansed of that, and there must be more justice. For years, officials who fled, I'm skipping parts. For years, officials who fled Ukraine have somehow been living peacefully abroad in very pleasant countries and without legal consequences. This is abnormal. There is no rational explanation why criminal proceedings worth billions have been hanging for years. And there is no explanation why Russians can still obtain the information they need. It is important that this happens without Russians. It is important that punishment is inevitable and that society truly sees this. So my questions, I guess, would be, number one, is that plausible at this point that there would still be this Russian infiltration, which is what he's implying in that statement, of NABU or other similar agencies? And if so, and that's the reasoning behind making these moves, why is the EU and that circle reacting the way that they are, in your opinion?
Sure. The reaction is very milquetoast. That's the European Commission and the group of G7 ambassadors are the two who put out statements, which really was, we react with trepidation. We want to have more conversations. Much stronger statements were put out when, say, a prosecution was put out against President Poroshenko, or the former Minister of Health was relieved, who was doing reform In that case, both those entities said, we don't support this. We think you guys will be taking a wrong path. Here, there are two government agencies that have been around for decades, but were radically reformed one was NABU, and then we added SAPO. The anti-corruption body, which is the best way to explain it to Americans is a special counsel. Ukraine has had a fully independent research entity, NABU, to fight corruption. That does the research. And then they had a special prosecutor working with them. And this has been since 2014. No means of the parliament to have an oversight of it or the president. It is independent, but it is, in essence, a special prosecutor that's gone on for over 10 years now. So one of the problems with that was obviously wanting to have more centralized control, especially as the entire country is during a martial law. Like even the governors are direct. They're not governors anymore. They're like military, they're commanders of military districts. That's, it's everything is centralized so people know what's happening. In this case, those two entities, both the research and the prosecution arm, have not been eliminated by law. What has happened is, and what people are reacting to, well, you're effectively eliminating us, is that now the AG of Ukraine, which is called the prosecutor general, gets to assign a specific prosecutor based on cases that are brought up by the research arm, not they have their own special prosecutor and they can do whatever they want. We will see where this goes after the fact. I think in America, we know the pros and cons of a special prosecutor. I know many people who are very personally upset about this because they took to the streets in 2014 for anti-corruption. But on the flip side, not only has this been a 10-year special prosecutor and ongoing, but you have to understand that what President Zelensky hinted at is that there was no systemic countering of corruption. There were no oligarchs which were attacked by this. For the most part, it was mid to low level people who were being exposed by this. And so, yes, it's a good thing for us to examine. Just last week, there was a member of parliament who was revealed to have been fully on the payroll of Russian intelligence. He was a member of opposition party, but nonetheless, it's this kind of thing that was exposed. Judges were exposed for having, cash and stuff. But in essence, parliament decided overwhelmingly, Parliament decided to vote for this limited change, which gives the AG of Ukraine the power to assign what cases from this research arm gets made. And then we'll see what happens after the fact. Also, the government is going to radically change after any elections or the end of martial law. So we'll see what happens. At this point, there's a lot of people who are personally hurt because they feel that they fought for this very clearly. But at the same time, you guys know, as in America, a new president comes in or something else, and all of a sudden they're like, well, have we really affected change with USAID, which I personally do believe, but there are people who are like, no, we want something new. So we'll see what the new approach to anti-corruption takes, but nothing has been eliminated at this point.
Cool. I have to go, but I just want to say I appreciate the perspective there. And as always, it's been a pleasure. So I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for that, Andre. We're going to move on then. We'll close out with our final topic about U.S. striking historic trade deals with Japan, Philippines, and Indonesia. We have a clip from Jesse Waters, if I can bring it up here. Let's see. And in the meantime, Shamsul, if you want to mention, I think your next podcast, you're discussing this as well, right?
Yeah, we taped it this morning. It's quite a deep dive. It's about an hour and a half, actually. Actually, we could have gone a lot longer because the topic is so intricate. So we look at just beyond this theoretical stuff, real world implication of the tariffs. We look at Canada. We look at what we see as there's what people say chaotic. We see a method in the madness. So we also look at it as a strategy for the staggering the 36 trillion debt that needs to be addressed. So this will help. We look at market like China, EU, and the interaction and all that and how it will translate into, at the end of the day, different tariffs agreements for different country on bilateral basis. I don't think Trump is into multilaterals, and I think for his philosophy is bilaterals are the way to work, which is very understandable, because what you're doing is pitting your competition against each other, pitting the competition against each other, right? So we also look at how developing countries are handling these tariffs and how it impacts their economy, and what needs to be why is it gonna cost what actually they need to do in order to adapt to this situation. That also include we did talk a bit actually about we did talk a bit about the Obama and how Obama handle his crisis compared to how what Trump is doing today. We also have a take on basically the last point. I think the last part is actually also the difficulty of the Trump administration in terms of to actually really come out with the narrative to the mainstream media, because the mainstream media is very left-leaning and pushing back against everything that Trump is doing. So that's a battle that we think we try to explain, and we try to do the best. We try to put Ellen's clip in there, but somehow my guy missed putting it in. So we're going to find a way to put Ellen's clip on the side somehow, because that's our jumping point, which is the steel
Alan's
tariffs.
going to be a star in Malaysia there. Here, guys, bear with me. I'm going to pull up the Jesse Waters clip. It's just a minute.
Right on.
Fox News alert, another bad day to be a panicking. Trump scored a hat trick. He crossed 3 countries off his tariff hit list. You ready? First, it was the Philippines and Indonesia, a magic number 19% for both countries. And then the big one, the Japanese. $550 billion invested here and thousands of jobs created. And they'll be paying a 15% rate. Turns out Toyota tariffs work.
I just signed the largest trade deal in history. I think maybe the largest deal in history with Japan. And that was done with Japan. They had their top people here, and we worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody. I always say it has to be great for everybody. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that. But we're doing really well as a country. We're strong. We have a lot of money flowing in.
Fox News alert, another bad day to be a panicking.
Sorry about that, guys. That was on loop there. Before I get to you, Shamsul, Frank, you've been observing and listening. You're unmuted, so maybe you have some thoughts or not.
Well, I was just reading the Mueller indictment of the various Russian organizations. This is many topics ago. So that was, I looked at my notes and I said, and after I had read it thoroughly in 2018, my comments were that that they were certainly interfering, and that, but their efforts were laughable. And, I couldn't imagine it made any difference whatsoever. So as to the notion that that there was no intent to interfere, that's one thing. Secondly, I think that it's going to be very difficult to block interference into our elections, and so we're just going to have to be more robust about it. And thirdly, about the idea that you need Ministry of Information, I think having something that rebuts, misinformation or propaganda is possibly the way to go instead of suppressing the information in the first place. And it's a shame that Twitter doesn't let you create threads based upon, artificial intelligence as to the topic, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I'm sorry. Of course, I'm interested in the trade stuff as well, but this has just started and time is running out. But I'm interested in all these topics, but I was caught up on the previous one. Sorry.
No apologies here. Always grateful for your insights.
I did want to comment on Samuel's podcast. The first part of your podcast, you kind of nailed a phenomenon that I had seen before. Sorry to completely derail Frank's thing, but anyway, in the first like 10 minutes, you were talking with your guest, and you put it the way you put it was there's a difference between the way economists, Jesus, can see things versus a business person, and I thought that was pretty enlightening. Sorry, just random comment out of the blue.
Yeah,
Oh,
quite
thanks for that,
stark,
ML.
don't you think so, ML?
What's that?
Quite stark, right? The difference in the way we view things.
Oh yeah. No. It's true. It's true. It's like that's the difference between a talking head on TV and somebody who actually has to go do something and run something, in reality. And the two are very different. For an expert on one side, they can tell you the ins and outs, but at the end of the day, they can't really tell you what's going to happen. Whereas a business person can tell you what will happen more than likely because they've been there, they've done that sort of thing. And I think that's a big. We don't have that. We don't have that perspective down pat yet when it comes to Trump and his, confusing economic plays. I think whether it's the first Trump won and the big beautiful or the Trump tax cut, and you had all these,
Yeah, you know why? Because when topics of businesses come about, what they tend to do in the media is call out people from the mostly from the financial sector. Okay, on all the economists. When I say financial sector, I mean either investment banking or in the academia of economics, right? Whereas for businessmen and entrepreneurs, we have to navigate all this thing, and we see the impact of what we are navigating. And what we try to do is actually be ahead of the curve. So we are not looking at, we look at past experience. And I went through this quite a bit with Chuang on it. But I just want to say this, though. I want to add to this point, which is a bit funny for me and Chuang, because as soon as we finish taping, my feed comes in, the Japan deal is in, some further news on India, and I was looking at Chuang. I say, hey, we should buy a lottery, So that's all on my comment. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Shamsul. Andre?
Yeah, I was also reading did you guys cite the Deutsche Bank report on what the tariffs are doing?
Please go ahead.
No, not the Deutsche Bank report. No.
Yeah, the Deutsche
We
Bank.
didn't.
The Deutsche Bank was surveying the effects of tariffs on importers versus exporters, and they found just relatively very few exporters who were willing to pay for that, and it's mostly being borne on the backs of importers that we're not seeing in the CPI right now. The effects that everybody, like you guys were saying, we don't see the price increases right now, but that importers are doing that, and manufacturers like GM and other ones are bearing the cost of increased parts, and this will only be brought up when we do quarterly profits reports. So that Q2 of this year for GM showed a deficit in profits because they not a complete deficit, but a lowering. Sorry, I think it was like over 30% lower in profits for this period, even though they had an increase of sales due to the tariffs on foreign cars. So even with that disparity, at some point, corporations are going to keep reporting the cost. You have to at some point somebody's going to, whether it's the importing business or somebody else, somebody's going to mark down on their financial reports. Somebody paid these costs, and so those costs will go into a P&L of a particular business, and it's only at that point that we'll have the conversation about the tariffs. So to my response to ML or you're highlighting the podcast by Shamsul about the businessmen versus economists, I think one thing that economists are kind of forced to think of is what is the year-long plus outlook of things, as opposed to maybe a businessman like Trump is much more comfortable with the volatility, but I don't think small businesses, which in the last month have had to go with like 29% on their beer cans, so we're down to nothing. So it's been a lot of being unable to plan on a yearly cost. But then again, a lot of businesses in the United States go on a month-to-month understanding of what their budget is going to be. So 6 of one, half dozen the other. Until we see profit and loss reports, I think, from corporations down the road, we don't know the effects of the tariffs. What do you think about that, Shamsul?
Well, I do agree with you exactly on that point. I mean, you won't see, I said in the podcast as well, I said, you don't see policies that are being implemented today. The results of it, you're going to see actually probably 8 to 12 months down the road. Right. It only lag behind. So, but what I like in what I'm seeing is there are multiple, the Trump administration has impressed me in this way. And if I come off like a Trump fanboy, please excuse me. I'm not. I'm looking at it from basically, I would say a business standpoint, what I learned over the last 40 years and how, and even Chuang from Chuang has got more financial experience than I do in that sense, from a finance standpoint, right? So, it's quite a complex issue, and that's why actually even today's discussion, it took us 1.5 hours. So if Andre, you go through that, and then maybe we can, if Rahul wants to do it, we can devote one specific segment to just really look at this and how the impact we think it is going to be. The only one thing that I forgot to mention in the podcast is that when I was talking about steel, when you look at steel and the 4 major importers of steel, which is 80% of the imports of steel, which is Canada, Brazil, Mexico, and South Korea. Let's take that 80%, right? I need to say, I think Canada will fall. I think Brazil is going to be a problem because Brazil has got really not is more diversified in terms of their exports. Mexico is more dependent on the US, and South Korea seems to actually already come out in saying that they're gonna have a trade deal with the US that'll be fair with everybody. They just came out for that. So then at the end of the day, what you do then is that you only got about 20%. The rest are all manufactured in-house. So that 20%, somebody else going to come in, and there's plenty of suppliers there. And as I said, even the importers are very strong. You watch out on this, Andre. Just mark my word. Okay? There we talk. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Rahul,
all right. Yes.
Back to you.
All right, guys. That looks like it's going to wrap our show today, the live portion. So just hang tight while we take down the live. And then, folks, please stick around with us 5, 10, 15 minutes after so we can chat in the Zoom. Here we go.
Sorry if we cut anyone off, but that's a wrap. Remember, you can catch us live Monday through Friday from
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Got to update this.
10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. It's your chance to join the conversation and have your voice heard. Just check the link in the description or visit americastalk.show. Together, through the free exchange of ideas, we can truly make America great again. Don't miss out. Tune in and be part of the dialogue.